welcome, you guys. Thanks for coming to the presentation on eating disorders. Thank you very much. It's not going to amplify my voice, but you guys get it up there, right? So eating disorders are just rampant on college campuses, rampant everywhere, but particularly in college during such a time of stress and transition. And everyone in this room, you probably either know someone with one, you might not even know it, that they are battling it, or you will at some point. And it's a very widely misunderstood disorder. All eating disorders are very widely misunderstood. So we brought Rachel Sherwin here, who is going to dispel some of the myths about eating disorders, help you guys understand more of the causes, what you can do, how to know whether you might have one or you don't, and give you, answer any questions you have. But more than anything is really dispel the myth that eating disorders are about weight and vanity and wanting to be thin. They're much more complicated, much more complex. Rachel is the program director at La Ventana Treatment Programs in Westlake Village. She runs the outpatient and will be running the inpatient program, and has a lot of experience, is a very, very cool person too, I must say. So anyway, I'm going to pass the mic over to Rachel.
Got my own. Okay.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for coming. Whether you have to come because a teacher made you, or it's like, yay, extra credit. I think it's great that you showed up, because of all the talks I've ever done, this is the best attended. And I've talked at various different college campuses and support groups, et cetera. So I really appreciate your care, concern for this issue. I wanted to start actually with you guys, and kind of, if you're brave, if you feel brave enough to volunteer, I wanted to see like what you guys think an eating disorder is, like what your experience with that is, if you have any experience with it. Like if I say eating disorder, you think, cool. Will you run the mic around?
Yeah.
So we can get this recorded. Thanks. Hi, what's your name?
Alan.
Hi.
And, well, I know there are two eating disorders I know of. One is bulimic, where you constantly, purge the food after eating.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's anorexia, where you barely eat anything.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
My girlfriend.
What's your name?
Dean.
Hi, Dean.
My girlfriend, she kind of has an eating disorder. I
Hmm.
don't really know much about it, but she told me whenever she looks in the mirror, she thinks she's fat.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, she's pretty thin.
Hmm. Yeah.
That could be then that is anorexia.
Not necessarily, but it's a thing, and it's called body dysmorphic disorder, which can very much be a part of an eating disorder and lead into it. This is great. You guys have like a good basic understanding. That's really cool. Does anybody else have any just starting out, any ideas about what an eating disorder is? Yeah. Do you want?
It's just a way to have
What's
control.
your name?
Oh, Alyssa.
Hi. Sorry, I just want us to all be friends. So we're gonna get really close. Okay.
It's just a way to have control over something in your life, because sometimes if you just don't feel like you have control, at least you control how much you eat or something like that. So
Yeah.
it gives you some sort of sense of control.
Absolutely. Very deep. I like it. Cool. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to start talking to you about stuff. Okay. So basically, I'm going to talk about I know the title of the talk is The Reality of Eating Disorders. So I want to give you as clear a picture as possible. And don't worry, I will explain the creepy mannequin at some point. It ties in. And we will also finish with a more intimate look into what it feels like to have an eating disorder. So, and Q&A. So at any point, if you have questions or want me to elaborate on something, please just raise your hand and let me know, because I like the interactive element. Okay. So eating disorders such as anorexia, bulimia, good job identifying those, and binge eating disorder. Those are the three eating disorders that are diagnosable in what's called the DSM-5. So there's two different ways people diagnose things. Currently, insurance companies are using what's called the ICD-10, and unfortunately, binge eating disorder is not considered an eating disorder that is treatable via insurance. So we're working on that, but we consider it an eating disorder. So these are psychiatric disorders that include extremely heightened emotions, attitudes, and behaviors surrounding weight and food issues. Eating disorders do not discriminate across gender, race, ethnicity, age, or socioeconomic backgrounds. They are complex disorders that can greatly impact an individual's quality of life. So for a long time, eating disorders were thought of as a rich white girl disease, but I've been treating men since I started in this industry in like 2009, and I've definitely treated people of all different ethnic backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses. It does not discriminate because, as you said, at the core, one of the things it is about is feeling disempowered in your life and not having control over something, which I think we know is applicable to the human race. It's important to understand that eating disorders are not diets gone awry or a lack of self-control, as in it's not about willpower or discipline. They are biologically based psychiatric disorders that have genetic and environmental factors. So I don't have the exact research, but if you have a relative with an eating disorder or mental illness, you are multiple times more likely to also struggle with one. So that's why we know that these things are not just based on environment and things that happen to you in your life. And as much as I would love to blame it all on the media, I can't, because there is a genetic factor there. So meaning that you can have genetic components that make you more vulnerable or susceptible to having an eating disorder, but it doesn't it's not like fate. Like if you had this gene, that you definitely are going to have an eating disorder. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. The environmental triggers for eating disorders are varied and can include weight loss, dieting, growing up in a home that fosters a diet mentality. It's a big one. Trauma, also a big one, loss, etc. The triggers are as varied as the individuals who suffer with this disorder. Okay, so I'm going to go into more depth with each disorder. So facts, signs, and symptoms of eating disorders. We'll start with what people thought was kind of the only eating disorder for a long time, anorexia nervosa. People started getting treated for this basically only as recently as like the 70s and the 80s. And so that means that people still don't know a lot about eating disorders, and a lot of research is only just now happening. So in the like span of like medical and psychiatric science, these are fairly new things, even though they're not new. So anorexia, which means, and you did a really good job describing this, inadequate food intake leading to a weight loss below an ideal body weight range. So doesn't mean you don't eat at all. Sometimes people don't eat at all, but that's fairly uncommon. Oftentimes they will just restrict their food intake to under, I would say, like 1,000 calories a day. And then oftentimes there's compulsive exercise involved. So whatever they are eating, they're burning off. But you will find people who eat nothing. And I've actually had clients who refuse to drink water, so they're hospitalized. The idea of anything going into their bodies is terrifying. So sometimes it can get to that level. Okay. Intense fear of weight gain, obsession with and persistent behavior to prevent weight gain. So it's constant. The thoughts in your head are constant. It's all you can think about. Can't focus on school, can't be present in your relationships. You think that your entire worth is how low your weight can get. And unfortunately, I think this is really like validated in the media. I think we all know like there's a lot of very underweight celebrities, the whole modeling industry. So little kids are watching this from a very young age, and this is the message that they get, that if I want to be glamorous, successful, popular, for females, it's underweight, and for males, which we'll get into, it's called reverse anorexia or muscle dysmorphia. It is getting bigger and bigger, but with the lowest body fat percentage you can, which is very dangerous. Okay. Self-esteem, overly related to body image. I think I just talked about that, but basically your self-worth, instead of being tied into like, are you kind? Are you intelligent? Are you funny? Are you a good friend, a good daughter, sister, brother, uncle, etc., is all tied into how you look and what people perceive you to look like. Okay. There are 2 types of anorexia. There is the restricting type, and then there's also the binge eating purging type. So purging includes overcompensating for eating, even adequate or less than adequate amounts through the use of exercise. So I want to clarify on that a little bit. So the restricting type is more of what we were talking about, where what people think anorexia is, like not eating nearly enough and sometimes not eating anything at all for a day at a time or days at a time. But what I see more of, to be honest, is the binge purge type. So to be clear, it's not binging in the traditional sense, which we'll get into, which would be eating an amount of food much more than the average meal, sometimes like 4 times as much in a very quick pace. But someone with anorexia would consider a binge to be like a regular meal, or maybe like a regular meal and a snack, or a meal that's not diet food. Like maybe I remember when I was in my eating disorder like a decade ago, I thought that like so for my 1 meal a day, it was like one of the options was Quaker oatmeal. And if I put honey on it or like bananas, that was cheating, and that was a binge. And then I felt the need to exercise even more than I usually was the next day, or take laxatives to get rid of it. Because I had tried many times but could not make myself vomit, which I'm grateful for now. But at the time, I wasn't thrilled with. Okay. So is that clear that, I wanted to clarify on this too. So it's not just through the use of exercise that purging occurs. There's what's called emesis, so vomiting, laxatives, so you're having bowel movements that are excessive, and I won't go into detail, but it's coming out that way instead. And then also you can compensate with restricting. So, I ate the honey oatmeal today, nothing tomorrow, not even my nightly meal. Yes, hi. Let me run the microphone. Sorry, Lisa. You didn't know this was going to be your job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask.
What's your name?
Ramona.
Hi.
Was that's different from like bulimia though?
Yes, we will get there, because in bulimia there are real binges.
Okay, so this is just like in your head, it's like, oh, I ate so much, when in reality,
yeah,
it's like
more often than not. Yeah.
Okay.
So what would make it anorexia binge purge type as opposed to bulimia is, unfortunately, they go by old standards, which is like a weight range that you have to look sick.
Okay.
But we know clinically that's not true. Someone can be restricting and be in a very dangerous state of health and look
Not
normal,
look like it,
or even be overweight, because there's the genetic piece. We're all different.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Mhm.
Oh, do you have a or are we passing back? Okay. So the next one that's on here is how this affects men. But to be fair, men can get any of these eating disorders, transgender, all the genders. We see actually a lot of transgender clients, because I imagine it's already confusing to be in a body that you don't feel you belong in, out of control. So I'm going to manipulate this body to get it the way I want to look, through unhealthy means. So we do see that a lot. So this thing called reverse anorexia or muscle dysmorphia, I would say that's kind of like the newest thing people are talking about. It's commonly associated with males. However, females are not immune. I think you guys have seen female bodybuilders or athletes who have really intense dieting and exercise practices. Basically, food is fuel to them and nothing else. So that does not discriminate by gender. It's an obsession with increasing muscle mass and a self-esteem overly related to one's body. So again, though, it's like you want to get bigger to feel, I imagine, more powerful. I've had a client before where he was really interested in gaining muscle mass because his brothers, he was the youngest of 3, and they would pick on him, and his voice wasn't heard. He had to like yell to be listened to at the family table. I'm sure you can probably picture that. So for him, achieving a more masculine, larger, typically masculine looking presence was a way he felt powerful and recognized. So the body basically, I like to say this, that an eating disorder is the body speaking when your voice is not heard. It's the unspoken voice. So this can involve compulsive weightlifting and or exercising to attain an idealized body. Common comorbidity with substance abuse issues, specifically steroids and human growth hormone, stuff like that. A lot of supplements that are not FDA regulated. There was this guy, his name was Zaz, I believe, and he was an Australian sort of like YouTube star, bodybuilder guy, and he would show his like food ritual. So he'd show his workouts. He would then show his food rituals, which he would like the raw eggs, sardines, supplement powder, and just like take it down like a shot. So it's really distorted and really unhealthy. And 24 years old, he looked healthy. He looked like the male celebrities, Thor. And he died at 24 years old of a heart attack. So also scary and dangerous, and I blame it on the media. Okay. So the next one we're going to talk about is binge eating disorder. Again, not one that people are super familiar with, but I know it's real. I grew up with it. My dad's like entire family, they all died at around 400 pounds each from health-related issues because they had untreated binge eating disorder. So it involves frequent episodes of consuming very large amounts of food, but without compensatory behaviors. So this is where it would differ from the anorexia binge purge type and bulimia, which we'll talk about. So without the compensatory behaviors, such as self-induced vomiting, laxatives, excessive exercise, or restriction. Well, I'm just like really jumping ahead. So we talked about that. Now you know again. It involves a feeling of being out of control during the binge eating episodes. So I found that often when clients are turning to a binge, they've had a stressful day, maybe things aren't going well in their relationship, they feel badly about themselves, badly about what's going on in their lives, and this is the escape. So they come home, they feel like they can just be themselves, and they're turning to food to fill the voids that they have in their lives, to feel full. Where maybe they don't feel satisfied in many other areas. But what happens is that initially, sometimes binges are planned out where they're like, I know I'm going to eat the box of cereal, the quart of ice cream, 2 whole pizzas, etc., and it's ritualistic. But sometimes it just spins quickly. So like maybe they had a plan to eat a certain amount of food, but then it just keeps going and becomes this really consuming process that can last for hours. And then at the end, they feel so sick that they can't even move. So it's pretty sad stuff. So there's feelings of strong shame or guilt associated with the behavior because in our society, anorexia is seen as like the glamorous eating disorder. It's like the one you want to have. I've heard this many times in the groups that I run. And binge eating disorder, like clients never want to admit that they binge eat when it's actually really common in eating disorder circles. And like, it's unfortunately, I think, not uncommon in society because, I mean, think of Thanksgiving, right? It's like, you're told not to eat breakfast, like, and then there's an intense amount of food and you're just supposed to like eat as much as you can, or like Super Bowl parties. I just think it's set up that way. So if you think about it, we're learning binge eating at a very young age. Okay, let's see. Indications that the binge eating is out of control, which would be eating when not hungry, eating to the point of and past discomfort, or eating alone because of shame about the behavior. Yet generally this is an isolative behavior. Actually, most of them are because of all the shame and guilt associated with it. You're seen as like Some of the things I've heard clients say is like they feel worthless, they feel lazy, they feel like slobs, they feel pathetic, like they have no self-will, power, no discipline. They feel it's something that they should be able to just get under control. So now we'll talk about bulimia nervosa. So this involves frequent episodes of consuming very large amounts of food, followed by compensatory behaviors. I think you guys are like sensing a pattern at this point, such as self-induced vomiting, laxative abuse, excessive or compulsive exercise. And we'll talk about what that means. What's the difference between appropriate exercise and when it becomes compulsive or excessive, or restriction. So it involves a feeling of being out of control during the binge eating episodes, similar to binge eating disorder. Self-esteem overly related to body image. So you see that in anorexia, bulimia, all of them. Binge eating disorder. Feelings of strong shame or guilt associated with the behaviors. And then there is a type of bulimia, which is incredibly dangerous, and I've treated a few times. It's called diabulimia. Which is a type of bulimia seen in diabetes in which insulin is withheld so that the nutrients, including calories, are not absorbed. So they manipulate their insulin levels, which is really dangerous, in order to manipulate their weight. So that way they can binge, and how they purge is through the insulin levels. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Any questions so far on those eating disorders? Yeah.
Well, it's not really my name's Lauren, by the way. It's actually more like a comment rather than like a question. Because like I've seen certain celebrities such as Demi Lovato who have had eating disorders, and I've seen them go through treatment. And knowing that at a relatively young age, I was in like high school at the time. And like it gives me like more awareness to others, like to help when they need it or anything.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that is a really good point. I love it when celebrities come out about their mental illnesses. I think Demi Lovato is an awesome spokesperson. She's still, I just got like a blip or something where she posted an affirmation about like that it's not weak to have mental illness, it's brave to treat it, and I thought that was awesome. And like Catherine Zeta-Jones came out about having bipolar disorder, which is really stigmatized as well. So I think it's good because people do look to them to be leaders and role models. So when they can, I like to say, use their powers for good instead of evil, it's really helpful. Good point. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yeah.
My name's Audrey, and
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, when it comes to bulimia and throwing up in something, is it typical that you don't always see the signs at first in the beginning?
Yeah. What do you think would be like this? Because I'm like, I actually have not talked about the signs. So what do you think the signs might be?
Well, I definitely think that you can notice that it's hard for them to keep down food, or perhaps because I know throwing up consistently or using excessive laxatives definitely takes a toll on your digestive system. I mean, it ruins your stomach lining and everything like that. So I definitely think not being able to keep down food after a while.
Yeah, and I would say, I love that you brought this up. I would say one of the biggest signs of bulimia is that they're going to the bathroom after every meal. So I think that's a big one. Also, I've had clients that like think they're really crafty and like no one's going to see the purge. But I had a family session a couple weeks ago where the little sister was telling the client that she's like, I saw it in the trash can. We share a bathroom. And you can smell it, etc. So sometimes they get very savvy and do learn to cover their tracks. But like why it's also helpful to work with local doctors because their labs are going to be all over the place. Their electrolytes, their potassium, their albumin, which indicates dehydration. Severe dehydration is another sign because they're purging up all
Consistently
their liquids.
taking the water out,
Yeah.
I was going to say, because my sister actually at one point went through a stage of bulimia and where she was excessively throwing up, and she'd go in the shower. I mean, that one
Popular
very common.
destination.
And my mom could hear her. She's like, "Stop! What are you doing with yourself?"
Yeah.
But her problem was that you couldn't see it on the outside. Her body, because the way her body type is, she is more of a curvy person, and so she didn't become an immediate, like, completely a stick figure where you could see her bones, and it was frustrating for her.
Yeah.
Because she was
That
doing
was
all
the
these
goal.
things to herself, and
Yeah.
she couldn't get that goal of being a stick figure. And it had a lot to do with the society, then the community she was in. She did dance for a long time.
I've treated so many
Yeah,
dancers.
yeah,
I
because
cannot
you're
even
in
tell
this,
you.
you're in this community where you're just seeing these girls who are stick figures, and their moms are pushing them to eat this way, and it's awful, it's horrid, and so that, along with society seeing this fashion where the fashion of the straight stick figure, flat-chested body, she couldn't get that, and it frustrated her.
Yeah, I think you brought up a couple really good points there. One is that, especially with bulimia, more often than not, they're not going to look emaciated because the binging compensates for the purging, so they kind of just maintain their weight a lot of the time. And clients are always surprised when I tell them, I know you're really scared to be on a meal plan, which is like eating regular meals and working with a dietitian because you think you're going to gain weight. But more often than not, because your metabolism starts working, you lose weight, actually, getting away from bulimia, and not like drastic weight loss. But they're really surprised because they think they're going to gain 50 pounds. I've heard many numbers that make zero sense, but yeah. And then you said something else that I thought was, the dancers. Yeah. Another element that one of the dancers I worked with pointed out was that, like, they're in leotards and tights, and there's mirrors everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's just a constant kind
You're
of
constantly
reminder
getting it
of what
thrown
they're
at
not
you.
happy with.
Right.
Yeah. So then, of course, they don't want to eat, and the first thing they want to do is get rid of whatever they do eat. Right. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is your sister better?
Oh, yeah, she's all better now. She got over that all.
That's great. Good. Cool. Hi.
Yeah, like it's me, Alan, again.
Yeah,
But
hi, Alan.
it just confuses me. Like, I wonder, why push through these things just to make yourself presentable in your image?
Yeah. Well, I love your thinking. I wish everyone thought that way. But for a lot of reasons that are under the surface, which is why we do therapy, and we don't just say, like, hey, eat stuff and don't throw it up, thank you, and don't eat too much, is that it's about issues of self-worth. Many of my clients grew up in homes that were really abusive. So sexual abuse is a big part of eating disorders. They found out from an early age that they were preyed upon because of their bodies, or that's the message that they got. And that, like, sexual assault survivors feel similarly. So they want to make their body a barrier. So with binge eating disorder, right, if you think about it, it's a physical barrier. It's a very clear message, like, do not engage. Not always, but, like, if that's their intention, if you're just naturally larger, that is not the message. But if you're engaging in binge eating disorder, oftentimes that is one of the underlying messages. And if you think about it with anorexia, it's, whether it's a man or a woman, but especially with women, they are making their bodies look completely non-feminine so that no one is going to want them sexually. They feel like no one would want them sexually or be drawn to them, so they're safe. And with men, I honestly see some of the same stuff based on sexual abuse. They want to just disappear too. It's like a way of, like, passive suicide. Make sense? Yeah, good. Glad I could clear some stuff up. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I think we grow up in a society, I know I'm belaboring the point, where the message is, if you don't look like this, you're not cutting it. And that's your worth. That's what's important. Because that's so much of what's focused on. If you, like, watch, I know we all have DVR now, but if you watch commercials, it's really crazy because, like, you'll have, my favorite, the Carl's Jr. commercials, where it's like this hamburger and it's, like, getting everywhere, but it's like a model eating it. And, like, I mean, maybe she has really awesome metabolism and eats burgers all the time. I don't know, but I don't think she does. And then like the next commercial will be for diet pills or like Weight Watchers. So it's like, I mean, how confusing is that? It sets up this like crazy making double bind, I like to call it. Hi, I'm just going to get interrupted. I'm just going to jump over. I'll just do it. I'm going to get in there. Okay. Hi, so sorry.
I just think it's funny you said that because I remember being, which I don't know, I never really like, struggled with an eating disorder or anything, but I definitely do I can definitely really, I think probably all of us can.
You're part of this world.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember I was in probably 7th grade or something, and it was the first time I saw the Audrina Patridge, Carl's Jr. commercial in her gold bikini.
Oh.
She's skinny as hell. She's all perfect. The next day, I made my mom get me a gym membership. The next day,
because what came up for you with that?
And
what were your thoughts when you saw that
I want to
commercial?
look like that, and it's I was a little normal weight 7th grader.
Yeah.
But
why do you think you thought I want to look like that? What made it appealing in the commercial?
I don't know. I mean, I guess that is what you see all the time, and I feel like that's also the age where because I was always skinnier, but then you hit puberty, and then I'm what are these? I have hips.
Yeah,
go away.
That you know what, you bring up a really good point on the puberty piece, because that is one of the big triggers into an eating disorder. Is whether, again, if you're a man, it's your body's changing, your voice is changing, things are happening. And if you're a chick, a lady, your hips are spreading out. You have these things all of a sudden.
And you don't have control over that.
Right.
So.
You don't have control. And maybe you didn't want it. And maybe there's new attention, and maybe you didn't want that. And it's what is this? I used to just be able to run and play, and now things are flopping. It's weird. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, hi. All right. Thank you. Great points. Hi.
Hi. My name's Anissa,
Hi.
by the way. But I was just going to bring something like that up. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I would see Victoria's Secret ads, and when puberty hit me, it literally hit me like a boulder. Yeah. And I had hips, but more than you typically would.
You were ready. You're woman,
yeah, it was
ready.
One day it wasn't there, and I was what is this? I'm not ready for this at all.
Yeah.
And so I was I remember people would criticize me for that. Girls would be oh, what are you why do you look like that? And you don't look like me. And so it's really hard dealing with that, especially looking up. I would look at Adriana Lima and be oh my God, I want to look like you, and I can't. So
yeah. Absolutely. I think thank you for sharing. It gives voice to something that happens a lot. And you brought up the bullying piece, which this is great. That's why I like Q&A. I'm that's not even on there. And that when we are made fun of, I remember in 5th grade, I think it's I gained weight. I think I was binge eating though. All this started at 5 for me. It was really annoying. And in 4th and 5th grade, these group of boys, I would walk by, and they'd be "Oh, it's an earthquake!" Because I was so heavy, and I'm walking, and they'd fall to the ground. Yeah. And I was
That's
really?
Awful.
Yeah, but I mean, it's awful. What happened to you? So it's I found there was a lot of shame associated with my body, and so my goal, from age 5, was I need to be thin. It was it was the only thing I wanted. I thought it was going to make me feel better about myself. So annoying. You find out wherever you go, there you are. It does not actually change how you feel about yourself.
Yeah,
call that an
God
inside
I had my
job.
mom.
Your mom was really
my
helpful.
mom was no, this is normal. You're fine the way you are. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish all moms were like that.
Me too.
We call those protective factors. Your question?
Oh, I just had a comment.
Oh wow, thank you. So helpful.
I just think it's really interesting that when I was younger in middle school, I feel everything was always about being thin, and now I feel it's turning more to a bunch of mixed signals, because if you look at the Kardashians, they have big butts and they're curvy and stuff, and it's interesting that I wonder what it would have been if when we were like 12 and 13. Because I mean, my cousin's that age, and they all want the boobs, the butt, everything like that. And I think it's just like, it's so mixed, you know?
Yeah, and I'm really, this is great. You guys have excellent points. I'm really glad you brought that up because I actually have big issues with the Kardashians. Imagine that. Yeah. They have body dysmorphic disorder. And we see this actually more in the African American culture. Because I watch The Housewives. So, like, I watch The Real Housewives of Atlanta, so I know these things. I call it field research. So, where it's this, like, corseting effect. Like, they actually will sleep in corsets and get plastic surgery. So, there's butt injections and breast augmentation. And they're still working out, but, like, it's like a different form of an eating disorder.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like the stick thin anymore. It's like working out, but then having like...
Yeah, like the fat can only go to certain places. Yeah. So again, we're manipulating. We're not in acceptance of our natural state. We're not eating what we want to eat. There's like, you know, they diet. I see it on the show. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's like, which evil do we want to pick?
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. Great point. Thank you. Cool. Question? Comment? Here, do you want me to do it? Okay, great.
Sorry.
This is good. I love how interactive you guys are.
My name's Molly.
Hi.
And just like body dysmorphia, I think is like a way bigger deal than people think it is. Because like my boyfriend struggled with it a lot last year. He got to the point where he would pick going to the gym over like going grocery shopping or hanging out with his girlfriend or taking his dog on walks or like certain things that, or like even homework. Like he would choose going to the gym over things that couldn't wait. Yeah. But he would make the time for the gym where he couldn't make time for other things in certain areas of his life. Yeah. And it was kind of crazy for me because especially being on the outside, he would show me pictures of him like 2 years ago. And he was like, I was so skinny and I was so gross and blah, blah, blah. And then I would see those pictures and he just looks like an average dude. It's really hard for me to see him so upset with the way he looked, especially when he looked fine. Yeah. Like, it's really hard to see someone you love, like, that upset with their body to the point where they start neglecting everything else in their life just to be happy with who they are.
Yeah. I mean, one, I'm so sorry, you know, that you had to go through that and your boyfriend had to go through that. But it goes back to what we were talking about, I think, with the muscle dysmorphia, is that the goal in that case is to get bigger and bigger. And again, like if you look through time at male figures, the role models, masculine, what you're supposed to be. It's like you look at a G.I. Joe doll from the 50s and he's like, oh, it's pretty like normal looking. My fiance's here. Do you want to stand up? I just want to show them like what G.I. Joe used to look like. Well, you did back then. Just interactive. Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Good. He didn't know. He's like, oh, I just wanted to come see you talk. So, and now, if you look at G.I. Joe dolls, they are like, I mean, it's terrifying. Their thighs are like, boom, boom. And like their arms, and like there's no neck. They have pecs that, I mean, are like seriously probably a C cup. It's nuts. So like, it's like, if that's your natural body, beautiful. I love it. I tell my clients all the time, it's not about the weight, it's about your behaviors. So if you're not hurting your body, and you just like, I don't know, came out of the womb that way, then that's cool. But like they are, as you said, isolating, putting this before anything else, and often killing themselves. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, and he told me that at one point he'd been thinking about taking steroids, and he didn't because his only rationale for it was, I can't afford it. And I was like,
thank God.
Yeah, I was like, that's something that's he never discussed this with me until later, and I was like, that's scary. I don't know what I would have done if that had happened. Yeah. Because that's like another level. Like, I understand working out to build muscle, but taking steroids because you're that unhappy with your body, it just scared me so much, because I was like, that can have real repercussions on your body. And he always pushes health and like fitness. So that's not like leaning the opposite of where
Yeah.
he's trying to go.
Yeah.
I was like, that doesn't seem right at all.
Like, that seems dangerous and unhealthy. That's, you know what, I think that is a good time for us to get back to the sheet, because we're going to talk about excessive and compulsive exercise. So you know what that looks like. Fair? Okay, let's do this. Okay, so excessive and compulsive exercise. Inadequate food intake leading to a weight loss below an ideal body weight range. That's just one form. Intense fear of weight gain, obsession with and persistent behavior to prevent weight gain. Only muscle mass is acceptable. Let me be clear, if we're talking about muscle dysmorphia as opposed to exercising to lose weight, body fat is seen as not okay. Self-esteem overly related to body image. There are 2 types, restricting and binge eating, purging types. Okay, we've already talked about this. So let's get into excessive exercise. So exercising beyond one's energy availability, not eating enough to support the level of activity. So that's key. If you are not eating enough and you're exercising too much, you are just losing fuel, and your body will not maintain. You will wither away. Exercising over and above the recommended amount as set forth by a coach, or exercising alone. Kind of my standard rule is no exercise if you are struggling with anorexia or engaging in bulimic behaviors, because that can really take a toll on your heart. But if you are, you know, trying to get it together and you're following a meal plan and doing right by yourself, to me, anything over an hour a day is pretty excessive. But I get that, like on sport teams and stuff like that, that's unrealistic. So then you better be Michael Phelpsing it and eating enough to like stay legit. Okay. Involves manipulation of frequency, so how often, duration, how long you're exercising at a time, and intensity factors. Like, what kind of workouts are you doing? Are you walking for like hours, or are you doing like spin class all day long? Associated with a focus on constantly increasing these factors. So like I remember when I was in my eating disorder, I started off with like a mile a day on the treadmill or something like that. And then it became, because I was losing weight, so I'm like, cool, this is working, let's go further. So then it became 2 miles. And then at the height of my eating disorder, I was running 5 miles 7 days a week, living in Arizona, mind you. So it was like 115 degrees outside. I tore muscle. I ran anyway. I couldn't walk. Like, it gets to this level of insanity. Just as a picture for you. Okay. Signs and medical complications. So, as I just mentioned, injury, or stress fractures, and the inability to stop exercising despite these setbacks. Chronic injuries that do not heal. Yeah, my torn muscle is still, like, it just never healed, because I pretty much, I think, ruined it. So running today, it'll still kind of like be a little bit weird. I don't know the last time I went running, but if I was going to, I remember it being painful. Okay. Also, bradycardia, which is like an abnormal heartbeat, decreased performance, muscle wasting, anemia, arthritis. Oh, anemia is like low iron levels, easy bruising, arthritis. I think we know what that is. Amenorrhea, which in ladies is losing your period for three or more months at a time. Believe it or not, annoying as they are, we actually need our periods. The hormones balance a lot of things, so not a good idea. And blood disorders. It must be noted that for athletes, coaches can play an important role in either encouraging disordered behavior or encouraging a healthful attitude towards the sport and one's health. So I have a client who was like training for the Olympics in I think it was short distance running, and her eating disorder literally started with her coach when she was 16. She could only eat certain things. She had to run like 20 miles a day, and he was really abusive mentally. If she couldn't get the numbers, then she was worthless. So unfortunately it can happen there. And then I've also met coaches and like dance instructors who were like, come talk to my class. I really want to make sure that they don't take things too far. I want to make sure that things are okay. if you're not, you need to eat enough to be able to exercise. So it can go either way. Okay. Okay, compulsive exercise. So we talked about excessive exercise, and then this is compulsive exercise. So in this case, the physical activity has an obsessive compulsive quality to it and may not be excessive. So like I've seen clients that like even though they know they're not supposed to be exercising, in their bedroom they'll be like doing sit-ups, and in like literally we're in a group session and they'll be like, you know, doing this. And they're not doing it because they're anxious. They're doing it because they're wanting to burn calories throughout the day. So see how that's like obsessive and compulsive? It's constant. And if they're not doing it, they feel anxiety. And if they do it, they feel relief. Okay. Okay. Involves manipulation of frequency, duration, and intensity, just like excessive exercise. This may involve a consistent rule of how much, how hard, what type, what days. These rules are doggedly followed. Example, oh, well, I already talked about this. Great. It's over 100 degrees out, but I'm going to anyway because it's run day. But every day was run day. And missing a day felt like I had failed a test or been broken up with. It was not a good feeling. And I obsessed about it all day long. Exercise is ritualistic. Example, I have to be on the elliptical for 30 minutes after each meal and for 15 minutes after each snack. So there's like it's like it becomes comforting. It's like I have a structure to my day and it's done this way. And if it's not done this way, everything is chaotic and I don't feel good. So any questions on the exercise, the excessive exercise, and the compulsive exercise piece? Yeah. Where did the mic go? Oh.
I was just going to ask the compulsive exercise, how that relates to OCD, and is it a form of OCD or can you have it with OCD, and how do those play on each other?
Yeah. So by itself, it's seen more as an eating disorder issue, but I absolutely think there is huge, it's not just me, it's agreed upon, that there's huge overlap or comorbidity. That means when things happen at the same time often. With obsessive compulsive disorder and eating disorders in general, because there's such a ritualistic quality to things and so much anxiety if you're not doing the behaviors in a certain way at a certain time. So yeah, absolutely, they're linked. Okay. Yeah, good question. Cool. Any other questions? Hi, great. Oh man, I'm running out of time. Good.
Hello, I'm Nathan.
What's your name?
Nathan.
I know you said it the first time. Sorry, I just didn't hear it.
You mentioned a lot of things about bodybuilding. Would you write that off entirely as being an almost aiding and abetting towards eating disorders, or do you think there's a healthy way to go about it?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a healthy way. I'm curious where you draw the line here. Like, is there? I think it depends a lot on each individual person and their own journey through it. But like, from and I would consider you being an expert. Because, like, I know the facility you work for, La Ventana. I know, like, you obviously have a pretty decent amount of experience under your belt. Like, would you consider that where there is a line drawn, or do you think it is case by case? Case by case. We always treat clients in an individualized manner. But, like, maybe I just hear the bad stories. I have not, if you guys know people who are bodybuilders and they have a life, they have relationships, they eat like, you know, normal people, and they feel okay in their bodies, then there's a good way to do it. But, like, I would say, like, it's more about, like, how they feel. Like, if they're like, you know what, this is a phase in my life, it's for these competitions, it's my job, I make money, but it's not all that I am. It's not going to be forever. And, you know, I have relationships in my life. I have hobbies. And if I like tore a muscle or whatever and couldn't do it, my life wouldn't be over. So that's one factor. And then I think it's like, are they eating enough? Are they not eating too much? Are they doing what's medically okay? So like if they're working, I would think you really need to work closely with a doctor if you're bodybuilding, because it can, like you said, be such a fine line and has a propensity towards being dangerous. So I think, yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Great. Good. It's a tough one. That was a good question. So I'm going to read a little blurb about other emotional and behavioral signs of eating disorders. Then I'm going to talk about the mannequin, which is called Kaleidoscope Divided, and read you the poem, and then we'll be done. If you have to leave at 2, it's fine. Is it okay if we go a little bit over? I think originally this was supposed to go to 2:30, and I'm like, Lisa, how will I talk for that long? Clearly, because you guys are so great and with your awesome questions, I can't talk that long. Okay. So other emotional and behavioral signs of eating disorders. Eating in secret, food rituals. And food rituals can be like, cutting your food a certain way. Certain foods can't touch. We can only eat this food. Orthorexia is a thing that wasn't mentioned here, but is basically a thing in society. Clean eating, only raw foods, food is fuel, that kind of stuff. So I consider that ritualistic. Excuses for not eating or disappearing after meals, which we mentioned. Social withdrawal, moods. These are really like great things to look out for, basically. Social, and you guys mentioned the social withdrawal, mood swings, as you know, because if you guys get like hangry, right? Like your mood is not going to be great if you're hungry all the time, or if you're overeating and feel sick. It throws off your sugar levels, your balance, all that. It's not good. Increased depression and or anxiety. I think that's self-explanatory. It's not a very happy place being in an eating disorder. Engagement in fad diets, no sugar, no white flour. So this is orthorexia. No carbohydrates, vegetarianism, veganism, orthorexia. There it is. Gluten-free with no medical reason. Clean or healthy eating. Probably should have read this beforehand. Excessive, obsessive, and or compulsive over-exercising. Viewing pro-Anna or pro-Mia websites, Instagram pages. So these sites trip me out on how insane they are. So it's like pro-anorexia and pro-bulimia websites. They tell you how to do it. They encourage you not to eat. If they were like, hey, if you ate today, that's okay. You can start over tomorrow. Restricting is the best. Purging is the way. It's really, it's out there. It's intense. And really a lot of mental illness there. Wearing bulky or baggy clothes to hide weight. So I've noticed that people who are underweight, struggling with an eating disorder, they will often wear clothes that are baggier, etc., so that people can't see that something might be wrong. And then also, if people feel ashamed of their bodies and they're overweight and don't feel good about it, they also tend to wear oversized clothing, again, to hide in their bodies. Okay, nausea, loss of hair, lanugo. Lanugo is like peach fuzz that you see on babies because they're little and they can't regulate their body temperature. So if they get cold, they have fuzz. That's the same when someone has pretty bad anorexia and they can't maintain warmth. They're always cold. You'll see them wearing jackets and sweaters in the summer, and they will have fuzz on their face. I don't know if it doesn't talk about this here, but also with bulimia, another sign is enlarged salivary glands. So they'll have a chipmunk look to them, and they did not have their wisdom teeth out. But it's because of all the purging, their salivary glands are becoming inflamed, and that's why they look that way. Okay. Amenorrhea, we talked about that for females, and loss of libido for males. You may have experienced that with your boyfriend. Good, I'm glad you didn't. But it is not uncommon, especially if you're using steroids. But if you're restricting your food, you're purging, I don't think you're going to feel really sexy, and you don't feel good, and you're tired. So that's why. Difficulty falling asleep or remaining asleep. I remember that. If you're hungry every night, going to sleep sucks. And plus, your bones hit each other, and it's bruising, and it's painful. And then, if you're feeling really guilty because you binge ate, sleep is not a thing that comes easily. Difficulty concentrating and or attending to tasks or conversation. And that can be because you're so obsessed with the eating disorder and what's going on. or it can be because like your brain cells are deteriorating, because actually your brain cells really need fat and carbohydrates. The brain cells are lined with what's called some of you may know this, myelin sheaths, and those are completely made out of fat. So if your brain cells are deteriorating, it is going to be difficult to focus. We sometimes call it the anorexic fog. They're sort of like here but not. Then also you're just like obsessed and disconnected. So that finishes that form. Let me talk about this guy. I think I'll skip my poem because I talked enough about my eating disorder. It was bad. You don't want to be in it. So this is something part of this national contest that an organization called IADEP puts on. That's the International Association of Eating Disorder Providers, professionals. So our clients made this. We did not get to choose the size of the mannequin, but I think it's good because it represents the mannequins you usually see in the stores, which are very thin. But if we start on this side, and it's double-sided if you guys want to come down afterwards and look around, but it's called Kaleidoscope Divided. This is the dark side. You're in the eating disorder, darkness, sadness. It feels like there's no way out and you'll never be able to break free of it. And then we have the distortion because, as one of you mentioned, you'll look in the mirror and see someone very different than what other people see, whether in binge eating disorder, sometimes they see a smaller version of themselves because that rationalizes the behavior and they think they can still engage in it and nothing's happening. And it's very similar with anorexia, where you're underweight, you see a larger person and think that you are not there yet and you need to keep losing weight. So that represents the distortion that comes back to you and that you feel in your mind. And this is the other side, where clients put various things that are special and important to them in life, what motivates them. There's like love, religion, music, flowers, sunshine, tattoos, all sorts of good stuff. So that is this guy. Let's see. Okay. Do you guys, because I want you to get out of here on time, do you have any final questions or comments? Also, I'm available afterward if you want, if it's like private, you maybe want to consult, I'll be down here. Otherwise, if we're good, thank you, and I appreciate your participation.